All right. Are we on? Okay, we are on. So, welcome back to this series. Now, if you're tuning in, let me just pull up my slide over here. If you're tuning into this video, we are going to be getting into the nuts and bolts of the sales process execution, right? So this is part of a broader video series titled the mid-market or commercial rep readiness for tech sales. Now, why am I doing this? Because I have spent the better half of the last 12 years in tech sales. So I'm 32 now. I went straight into sales like back when no one even knew what tech sales really was. Like it's only really blown up now where it's all over social media and everyone's like, oh, I've got to get into tech sales. I was doing this shit back in like the dark ages, right? Like before we had GPT and before we had all these sophisticated AI tools and like LinkedIn Sales Nav was just starting to hit the market. Like, you know, we were still calling landlines. We didn't have Lucia and like Zoom Info and all of this stuff till like a few years into my tech sales career. So I have been selling since back then, and I am so passionate about the collective knowledge that I've gathered, right? So what I'm sharing with all of you on this series, if you've just tuned into this video, my team is going to have a link below in the description to a playlist. The playlist includes around 18 videos, if I'm not wrong, just for commercial AE rep readiness, right? So it should be somewhere between 15 to 18. Load that up on a different window. Once you finish watching this, go watch all of those. I want you to just binge watch all of that. Like block out a freaking Saturday, cancel date night with your girlfriend if you're a guy, cancel date night with your boyfriend if you're a girl, and just say, babe, we're watching tech sales videos tonight. Okay, so binge watch all of that because that is my collective knowledge of 12 years of tech sales training that has been invested into me, from all the deals that I've done, from all the successes that I've had, from all the mentorship that I've had across Gartner, across Crowdstrike, across Zscaler. Like I have sold for like the holy trinity of US big tech. And then I've also sold at small companies. So all of those things that I've learned, I've packaged it into essentially everything on my YouTube, and I'm giving it to you for free. So go watch all of those. Now, if you're tuning into this video, this is going to get into the nuts and bolts of discovery. Now, one of my early sales mentors, bless him, really cool dude. When I was at Gartner, he was actually my VP. Shout out to Steve DeWitt. Steve told me something very interesting. He said, Joe, like 75% of your deal is actually done in the discovery phase. And I looked at that and I thought, surely not, right? But you got to understand, if we take the house analogy, your discovery is the foundation upon which your entire freaking house is built. And if you're building a big, fat, multi-hundreds of thousands, multi-year deal, it's like you're building a mid-sized tower on foundations. And if you don't do it properly, then you're trying to build something big on really weak foundations. And that's how you end up having your building collapse, AKA missing your forecast, not getting your deal in, right? So it is so important that you nail discovery. Now, I'm going to share some pretty cool shit with you today, if I say so myself. What I'm going to share with you is the way I do discoveries. This is something that I learned from Gartner, and this is something that I carried through into CrowdStrike with tremendous results. And this is something that I honed even further at Zscaler. Now, if you think about how reps typically do discoveries, they just show up and they talk. Or even worst case, they show up with a slide deck about them, and they then have a bit of a conversation about the customer. That is wrong. What you want to do is show up with something like this. This is not about my solution. This is about the customer. I am showing up to a discovery with a strategic one-page overview with some hypothesis of key initiatives, of technology initiatives, of pain. I'm showing up to the discovery with that, right? Now you're probably looking at this and going, holy shit, like this is a lot. Don't worry. I literally have a template for you. I literally have a GPT prompt for you. You can just rip this off, punch this into this template, and you can start creating your own one pages and I will show you how to deliver them. This also doubles up as prep. That's the beautiful part. You don't have to redo prep. You don't have to recreate prep. The idea is you want to be doing that work and then repeating that or reusing that, right? So your prep should be your discovery presentation. So I'll show you how to do this, and I'll also show you how this flows into building out your questions, right? So this is going to be a bit of a chunky video. I was actually going to break up how to prep for discoveries and then how to do discoveries, but I'm actually just going to marathon this one. We're going to do how to prep and then how to actually, do the discovery, and then how to close out the discovery and post discovery action. So strap in. This is going to be a marathon video. Get your freaking notebooks out, whatever it is that you need to record notes, but like strap in, because we're just gonna go for a little while, right? Now, let's start with the prep for discoveries, because so many reps fuck this up. Holy shit. I have sold SaaS as well as services. Gartner is intangible. So I was selling like multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars of solutions, like multi-year contracts. Like I was doing deals like north of 250, 300, 400K across like 3 years when I was at Gartner, to like mid-sized companies, guys. I was selling to like sub 25, sometimes sub 50 employee companies and getting serious dollars out of them. And then at Crowdstrike, again, I was doing some like monster size deals, right? Like some of my biggest deals at Crowdstrike, like across, 5 years. I remember I did a healthcare deal for 5 years that was like, close to 1.2 mil AUD on the final tally, right? So like all of that was based off the foundation of starting my discoveries like this. And I see so many reps fuck this up. They don't do the prep. They literally show up and wing discoveries, and that is horrible. I'll tell you why, right? Your ability to get information from your prospect is underpinned by your ability to build massive trust and massive credibility. If you can't establish massive trust and massive credibility early, then they're not going to tell you anything. They're not going to give you genuine pain, right? Like if I use the analogy of dating, if you show up as a guy, for example, to a date and you don't look good, you smell like crap, you dress like crap, you have no riz, and God, I feel weird saying riz. I'm 32. So let's say no charisma. You don't have charisma. You don't have presence. And you just come off as a dork. Like, you're not going to build value in the eyes of the woman that or the guy, whatever your orientation is. You're not going to build value in the eyes of the person that you're trying to effectively convince to keep seeing you, right? So you need to do that prep beforehand. So what is the easiest way to do prep? The easiest way to do prep is to use the asset that you're going to use for your discovery. So I love doing my prep just with my one pager, and it's really straightforward, right? So let me give you a live demonstration of what this looks like. So what I've done is I have taken the prompt, which is up here, the GPT prompt, and I've punched it directly into GPT. By the way, if you don't have the paid version, get the paid version. It's like totally worth the expense. Alternatively, you can use DeepSeek, but I haven't played around with DeepSeek yet. So I have a little bit. I still like my paid version of GPT, so I might maybe switch it over to DeepSeek. But pick your poison, whatever AI you like. Punch in the website, punch in the LinkedIn, and add in the annual report. If you don't have an annual report, that's fine. You can just ask GPT to hypothesize based off the industry they're in, and it will give you a similar output. Now, let's put that in there and see what it comes out with. Here we go. So the company, by the way, is Novo Nordisk. It's a company that one of my mentoring students is actually engaged with at the moment. So I thought it'd be a good example to do. And here we go. Fantastic. Cool. So we have a nice little summary over here. What you can do is literally take this, the inputs. So take point number 1, punch that into your strategic goal. Likewise, strategic goal 2, strategic goal 3, technology goal 1, technology goal 2. All of this is in here, by the way, so you can see their technology priorities. I've got put 3 of them, etc., etc. Punch that all in here, and you have your executive 1 page completed. Now, how do you tweak this to be relevant to you? Well, the only thing I would change is I would make sure that your technology challenges are aligned to the category of technology that you sell. So for example, if I'm selling cyber, I might ask this to say, can you edit the tech challenges and tailor them to cybersecurity and data security as I want to hypothesize what their challenges could be in this area. Give me 3 points still. Cool. So now this is going to build out what my cyber challenges could be. So if I'm selling a cyber solution or cyber services, I've got that. What I could also do, again, let's say that you're selling cloud solutions, right? Let's say you're doing some sort of cloud visibility. What could you change this to? Actually, I can just edit it right here. To let's say cloud visibility and management challenges, right? Pop that in there. Boom. Boom. Simples. Okay. So you don't have to, this doesn't have to be rocket science, guys. Right? What you're trying to do here is hypothesize. You're trying to come up with hypothesis that goes into the 1-pager. So I'm just going to clean the camera. How are you doing that? There we go. So you want to just hypothesize what their challenges could be. It doesn't need to be like bang on accurate. What you're trying to do is just get enough to have a bit of a foundation to work off during the discovery. The reason, again, that I like this approach, and I want you to shift to this approach, and I'll show you how to deliver this and how to use it in your discovery flow in this video a little bit later, is the reason we want to do this is it gives you some stuff that you can share with them and say, hey, how does this resonate with you? Are these challenges you are facing? As opposed to showing up and just being like, tell me about your challenges, right? Like if you can show up with some hypothesis, they can correct you. They also see that you care, right? They can also see that you put in the effort to understand their business. The other thing that I will say that is incredibly important is make sure that you actually read through these outputs and understand it, right? So like, what does the business do? Okay, well, they're dedicated to defeating serious chronic diseases through patient-centric solutions. What are their strategic goals? Well, they want to focus on leadership in diabetes and obesity. They want to drive innovation in that space. They want to expand into cardiovascular and emerging therapy areas. They want to do rare disease treatment, right? So you start to like understand the areas so that when you speak to them, you can say, hey, like my understanding is these are the areas that you guys play in. How does that line up to you? Is there anything new that you're looking to explore that isn't on this? Is there any new pivots that you're trying to make? Like this is how you start to have, you know, McKinsey style conversations as a sales guy. Like it is incredibly, incredibly valuable to the prospect as well, because they often look at this. I have literally had prospects look at my 1-page summary and go, can you send me that? Because I want to use that in my strategic planning. That is fucking clean. Like I've literally had prospects do that. Okay. So this is how you show up. You show up polished. Guess what? That also turns into your prep, right? So when you do your prep, boom, That's your prep. Done. Read it a couple of times, familiarize yourself with it. When you're actually replaying this to the prospect, this is what it looks like. So I just put this into presentation mode. Again, you can download this with the animations and all. So it builds out like this on the call, right? So that is clean, that is polished, that's how we want to be approaching it. Here, for example, is an example of, what I built out for someone I was selling to when I was at Zscaler, right? The only other thing you need to do is make sure that you insert some logos of similar customers that you work with. If you don't have any, that's okay. Insert some logos of the top companies that you work with, right? So what that shows, again, is credibility. So all in one page, you've showed them that you've done your prep, that you understand their business, that you understand what their technology goals could be based off what is in their annual report as well as what is being hypothesized based off their industry. You're coming with a list of potential challenges and you show them all on the same page that you work with some pretty cool brands. Like, that is how you establish credibility fast, okay? This is something that we would do religiously at Zscaler. This is something that I personally actually did when I was at Gartner. Way back when I was at Gartner, no one was doing this, and I thought, let me try this approach, right? Because there was one guy in the UK that was doing this, and I was like, that's freaking cool. What if I could show up with this kind of approach and just be really sexy and really schmick and just show the customer that I care? And what it resulted in was like me being able to get much bigger deals done, build a lot more credibility. And when I was at Gartner, I was selling to CEOs, right? I was selling to like the sharpest of the sharp. Like I was selling to like apex predators. And when I showed up like this, they were like, wow, this guy's showing up like a CEO. I want to pay attention to him, okay? So that is prep. Now, what I will tell you is, and we will get into this a little bit later when I go into what's called operating rhythm, but operating rhythm is essentially, how you set up your week. You want to make sure that if you have a discovery, say on, Wednesday, you want to make sure that you're getting your prep done on a Monday, right? Like I would literally put 30 minutes in the calendar, and that is your internal prep block. It's so important that you do that, and it's so important that you don't skip that. There's that saying where if you fail to plan, you will plan to fail, right? It is literally that. And there was another one, there's another one, the Aussies, typically Aussies often have slightly more vulgar ones, but like the Aussies literally say piss poor planning equals, now I need to look this up. Piss poor planning equals, there we go. Piss poor planning promotes piss poor performance. Okay, so that is honestly no truer words have been spoken, right? So why do I keep harping on about this? Do the fucking work. Okay, prepare, show up like a professional. It helps you get deals done so much more effectively, right? Now, no more about this. I think you guys get the message. Start implementing this into your daily workflow. Start showing up to discoveries like this. I will show you how to use this shortly. Now, how do you actually get into the discovery? So, there's three parts to any discovery. There's the open, there's the middle, and there's the close. Each of them is distinct. Each of them has different elements to it. And if you do it right and you do it really masterfully, everything will seem super natural, right? Everything seems like it's just happening, right? But it's all happening in a very choreographed manner. So essentially what you want to do, let's dive straight into it. You want to open off the discovery by establishing credibility and trust through an authentic intro. I see so many reps hop onto a discovery call and they're like, hi, I'm X and I work at this company. Who are you? It's like, tell them a little bit more about who you are as a person. Briefly, it doesn't need to be long, but during the pleasantries when you hop on, right? And by the way, read the room. Like if you hop on and someone is like, tight-lipped, just like, okay, let's get straight down to business, then okay, you go straight down to business. But if you hop on and, they are a little bit more chattier, they are a little bit more open, then you want to give them a little bit of an authentic intro, right? Especially if you're selling in Australia, selling in New Zealand, these are all pretty personable sort of locations. I don't know about the UK, but Brits tend to be pretty receptive, right? Brits tend to be pretty chatty and receptive as well, depending on which part of the UK they're in. And likewise with the US, right? I mean, it is important that you have that element of rapport. So I'd usually hop on and I'd say something like this. I'd say, hey, Joe, at Zscaler, I look after the commercial and the enterprise regions here in New South Wales and Queensland. And I've been here for about a year. Prior to this, I've spent a fair amount of time at CrowdStrike as well as Gartner. So I've been across both cyber as well as more in broadly research and advisory and tech strategy. Look, when I'm not working, I've got a couple kids. They tend to keep me pretty busy. I've somehow managed to get them out of the house today, so I get a bit of free time, a bit of alone time. But that's a bit about me. So, pause. By the way, I don't have kids. So, if you do have kids, say that. If you have a puppy, say that. If you're single and lonely, then just make a bit of a joke there. Say, look, I don't have kids and I don't have a puppy. Hopefully you and I can be friends, right? You be personable, right? Crack a bit of a joke. Like, humor is such an underrated tool, and it helps warm up that call. Once you do the pleasantries, go into the purpose for the call, right? That's the next step. Hey, obviously, by the way, sorry, before you do that, ask them about them. Hey, I've stalked your LinkedIn. I've seen the professional side, but mate, I'd love to just hear a tiny bit from you around, what you do over there. And if you want to share, what's life like outside of work, right? Get to know them briefly as people as well. Then dive into the purpose, right? Hey, purpose for today's conversation is to learn a bit about you, and I want to share some insights around how we're working with your peers. How does that sound for you, right? They'll say, yes, that's perfect. Then what you want to do is dive into the upfront contract, right? And so some of you might not know what an upfront contract is. Some of you might. An upfront contract is a very, very, very useful tool that I learned when I did Sandler sales training. Sandler was by far some of the most useful stuff, less so in terms of sales process and overall go-to-market, but definitely in terms of specific tactics. And I really liked some of this stuff, right? So the upfront contract of the UFC is essentially, I might actually do an upfront contract and then I'll explain what I just did, okay? So I would literally say this. Let's say your name's Bob. I'd say, Bob, look, just a scene set. Typically these conversations go one of two ways. I have many of them every week, every month. Sometimes we might get somewhere through the call or towards the end of the call, and there might actually be no value. There might be nothing we can help you with, and that is totally okay. I will not be some annoying vendor rep trying to force a solution down your throat that you don't need, okay? And I just want you to know that. Alternatively, we might get to the end of this call and there might be some value. There might be some areas that we both look at and go, hey, might be worthwhile exploring here. And my ask is, if that is the case, can we leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end to explore some next steps, if it's relevant? How does either of those outcomes sound for you? Pause out of roleplay mode. What I've just done there is I've literally told them that if there is value, great. If there isn't value, no worries, dude. I will not try to forcibly sell you anything, okay? Most executives hate vendor reps that are pushy and constantly trying to force stuff down their throat, right? It's not a good feeling. So that's essentially what you do with the upfront contract. You have to establish the UFC in your discovery, and there's 3 parts to it. 1, state the negative outcome, and 2, state the positive outcome, and then 3, get the state that they go 2 ways, one of 2 ways, then state the negative outcome, then state the positive outcome, and let them know or ask them, would either of those be okay? And that is a social contract that has been put in place now that no one is forced to do anything and it's all chill, okay? Very powerful way to start your call. Once you do that, dive into the mutually valuable agenda and say, awesome, well, agenda-wise, what I'm going to do is I actually want to kick off this call by sharing a little bit about your company that I've done some research on, and get your feedback on it. Following that, I will then give you a bit of an overview in terms of where I think we can help, and then we can look at some next steps if that's relevant. How does that sound agenda-wise? So what you've now done is you've effectively framed up the executive one pager, right? So you've framed up the value prop, or I call this a value proposition, right? So you've framed up the value prop. And so we dive into the middle of the discovery, right? So let's go over here. All right. So essentially, this is where you pull up the one pager. You've done your opener now. You've effectively opened off the discovery. We're now starting to kind of tiptoe from the back end of the opener into the middle. So how I typically do my questioning, right? How I typically do my questioning is I will tie my questioning back to the executive one pager, right? So I will literally flash this up, right? And if I put this into presenter mode, I'd say, awesome. So, hey, just to kind of kick us off, as I mentioned, I've done some research into your company, and I'd love to share that with you. I'd love to replay that to you, and get your feedback on how we're aligned, if we're aligned, right? So my understanding is, at a strategic level, and let's say your name's Bob, I'd say, Bob, I'd love to get your feedback on this. From what I could see online and from your annual report, I understand that there's a couple of different strategic goals, right? So goal number 1, goal number 2, and goal number 3. Bob, just curious to understand, just at that business layer, how does this line up? Then pause out of role play mode, stay there for about 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. Get them to unpack a little bit about the business. Get them to tell you about, yeah, look, this is happening. Yeah, that's right. That's not right. You got to think about this. You say, fantastic. And then you can maybe start to hone in on what's strategic for them. You say, Bob, what's strategic for you? I mean, this is at that business layer. What do you care about? What are the top things that are top of mind for you, right? And that is a pretty smooth transition into the tech layer. So then as they're talking, you say, interesting, mate, interesting. So then you can pull up the tech goals and say, look, these are some of the technology initiatives that I it's a combination of hypothesis plus anything that I could draw out of your publicly available information. How do some of these goals tie back to your world? Then start getting Bob to talk about the technology goals, right? Then we get into the tech challenges and say, Bob, listen, this is a bit proactive, but I wanted to really put myself in your shoes before we even spoke and try to understand what your challenges could be. And I'm very curious to understand if this resonates, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. I want you to give me any additional details. But from what I could see and also from what I could hypothesize from the work we're doing with other customers, my understanding is these could be challenges, right? Challenge 1, challenge 2, challenge 3. Bob, I'd love to hear, what's relevant to you? Then you start to get them to unload their challenges, which, by the way, more often than not, by the time you get to this, they start to tell you shit. They're like, yeah, look, this is a challenge, and that is a challenge, and this is a gap, and you can start to really dive into this. Now, I see a lot of reps start to get stuck because they hear those challenges and they think, well, challenges equals pain. Not always. Not always. Pain is really when you start getting into specific layers. Right, so what you've just done is effectively started going from the opener of the discovery into the middle of the discovery, right? You've started to make your way in. It's kind of like a canyon. You've started to make your way down into the canyon, and you're starting to see, okay, what's down here, right? What sort of stuff can I find down here? Now, once you get to that, right, this is where we start to really get into the pain finding. Now, finding pain is an art. The only way you will know how to find pain is if you know what customer pain points exist, right? And that might seem like a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, no shit, Joe. Well, if I don't know what I'm looking for, how do I know what to ask them, right? And you'll be surprised. A lot of reps don't know what they're looking for. So how do you find pain? Your pain starts with the problems that you solve for your customers, right? So look at what you do really, really well as a company, right? Look at your defensible differentiators. So for example, I'm going to use CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike's defensible differentiator is their ability to respond rapidly to cyber threats on behalf of their customers, regardless of scale. You could be a 10,000 person company or a 5-person company. CrowdStrike is fucking phenomenal at responding to cyber threats. They are cyber response and remediation machines. They also have great technology, right? So my specific questioning, right, I would then really start to hone in on specific areas. Now, this, by the way, is only if the customer themselves hasn't started to open up already. More often than not, if you've done this sort of strategic discovery, right, you've done it with the one pager, by the time you get down to this part over here, they're starting to tell you shit. Right, you can start to hear enough that you can start to understand, okay, what's going on, and then you can start to ask them follow-up questions. You can say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. What is the current state process around that, right? So, for example, if I take, let's take its multi-cloud visibility, right? So I'm going to hypothesize someone like Novo Healthcare that we're talking about here in this example. They're a big fuck off company. They're huge. They have, sorry, am I on the right website? Here we go, right? So they probably have, tons and tons of business units. They've got all sorts of stuff. My guess is they're probably running on multi-cloud environments, right? So I'm guessing they're probably not just an Azure house. They're probably a GCP house, potentially an Oracle Cloud house, potentially an AWS house. So if I was selling a multi-cloud visibility solution, right? So in terms of like, managing FinOps, right? So again, so if I'm throwing terms at you and you don't understand what's going on, like that's okay. I'm just giving you an example. But let's say they have a multi-cloud visibility solution for cloud cost management. And, I would literally start to ask questions, like once we're at this tech layer, right? I would start to ask questions, like once they start telling me stuff, I would start to ask questions around, hey, can you tell me a little bit more around your current multi-cloud setup? How do you guys deal with complexity? It sounds like you have a lot going on there. Has complexity been a challenge, or has visibility been a challenge? How has having so many clouds been a positive but also potentially a negative for you? You can start to ask these questions to then start to really get down and pinpoint where are all the challenges. Now, I use a framework when I'm trying to find pain, which is called broad and focused. Broad questioning is some of the questions that I just asked there. Broad questioning is flashing up the executive one-pager and saying, tell me about your technology goals. Tell me about your technology challenges broadly, right? My understanding is these could all be challenges for you. How does that sound? Tell me a bit about this challenge that you said is a challenge for you. Tell me a little bit about this. Those are all broad questions, right? It's like scene setting questions that starts to help me understand, if we go back to that canyon example, where in the canyon do I want to start navigating to? And where in the canyon do I want to stay the fuck out of, right? Because there's going to be places that are dead ends. Typically a dead end is they might have a challenge, but it's not a challenge worth solving. They might have a challenge, but they already have a solution for, right? So you can start to ask questions like, hey, you mentioned that's a challenge. Is that something that you currently have a game plan to address? Like, is it a challenge that you have a solution for already in your mind that you maybe haven't gotten around to yet, right? Or, they'll tell you, hey, it's a challenge that we don't actually know how to solve, right? What you're trying to do is find the problems that matter to the technology goals and then more broadly to the strategic goals that they don't have answers for. That is your broad questioning. Then what you want to do is start getting down into the specific pain questioning. How you do that, and we'll go back to this CrowdStrike example, if I know that if I was selling CrowdStrike and CrowdStrike's really good at detection and response, then I would start to get into specific questions around the company's ability to detect threats and respond to threats. I would say, hey, how do you respond to threats after hours right now? What's your workflow around that? Who in your team responds if you're short-staffed or if you're on holidays? If they say, yeah, look, we can't do that, I say, hey, just curious, what happens in the case of a large-scale cyber attack? If something were to get into your environment during New Year's Eve, what's the game plan? I'm sure there's something there, right? Do you have some sort of game plan in place, right? So what you're now doing is once you get the broad level questioning, you then go, okay, what are all the things that we're really fucking good at solving? And then re-architect questions back from that, right? So if you're really good at cost visibility, then you're looking at questions around how do they currently get cost visibility, right? Has cost visibility been a challenge? Has cloud cost management been a challenge? Has there been mandates from the CFO to trim out cloud costs because things have started to get unmanageable? You could ask them point blank questions like, look, I'm just curious, is that something that you're worried about right now, that there might actually be massive cloud costs accruing in the background right now that maybe you don't have visibility around, right? What you're trying to do, guys, is really hone in now at this phase of the discovery. You've done the broad, you understand the strategic goals, you understand the technology goals, you started to get into the high level technology problems, then you start to pinpoint specific areas in those technology problems, right? Like, this is where pain finding is a serious art, right? And the only way you're going to get them to open up and tell you shit is if you show up with this level of professionalism. You show up and you're like, dude, I really fucking care about you. I want to understand your world. I want to understand what your challenges are. And I want to see if I can help you. And if I can't, and if there is nothing there that you need helping with, that's okay. But if there is, let me really understand your world. That is the attitude that you show up with when you show up with this, right? So that is your pain finding framework, essentially, right? Use the value proposition. Use that to start getting into the conversation, get to that technology challenge layer over here, and then really start to hone in on specific areas. How do you find those specific areas? Reverse engineer those questions off the back of what you are really good at. Whatever your software is, whatever you're really good at, reverse engineer your questions off the back of that, right? So I'll give you one last example and then we'll move off, right? Because I think it's important that you start to understand the examples and how this comes to life so you can build this for yourself. One of my mentorship students right now, he is effectively a chief revenue officer at a small startup. And we worked on a lot of this pain finding stuff together where, they have an Azure DevOps backup solution. And for them, it's all about securing backups of Azure code, right? And basically, if you have any sort of code base and your business is your code, all your critical applications, are all, proprietary and self-coded, and you need to protect all of that code, you need to have backups for your code, especially if you're hosting in Azure, because Azure doesn't have automatic backups after 28 days. So I would be re-architecting questions off the back of that. I'd be saying, hey, how do you guys back up your code right now? Have you guys ever had any instances where, the backup got botched and there was a bit of a serious scare? What happens after that 28-day mark? I know Azure doesn't have an automatic backup after that. How do you guys address that right now? What is your fail-safe plan, right? If something were to hit the fan, what is your fail-safe? How do you come back from a serious backup fuck-up, right? Obviously, you don't say fuck-up, but you might say, how do you come back from a serious backup, failure? But these are all the questions that I would be asking if I was, if I was in my mentorship students' shoes, right? I'd be saying, how do I start broad? Right, so my broad level questioning would be, tell me about your current backup strategy. Tell me about all the applications you're building. How are your applications going to grow? Do you guys have any broad challenges when it comes to building and spinning up applications and hosting them? And then you start going into the deeper layers, and ultimately what you want to land at is some serious business pain that they will now start to understand and go, holy shit, this is a problem. We got to get around to this. We got to do something, right? Here's further open-ended questions you can use, right? Is the business looking to improve this process? What are some of the potential challenges you need to address with X or Y process? How does this challenge impact your business? That is a big one. Guys, this is a fucking huge one. Once you get on that sort of money problem, you might then ask them that question, say, hey, what's the impact here, right? I mean, I don't, touch wood. I don't want anything bad to happen. But what happens if something bad does happen? What is the downside impact? And when they start to tell you that, you can tangibly see it in their faces. They're like, holy shit, like, yeah, this is a serious fucking problem. Like, we need to do something about this, right? That is the art of selling. It's great questions, deep credibility, and asking genuine questions with genuine curiosity and getting them to open up, right? So that is how you get into the really the body of the discovery. Now, once you have all of that pain, you then need to start to now transition from the body of the discovery to the closeout of the discovery. Now, I typically do my discoveries for 45 minutes. So I don't like 1 hour discoveries. I like 45-minute discoveries. And there's a reason for that, because with an hour, there's an expectation that you're going to do a presentation and blah, blah, blah. And I try to keep it simple. I don't want to actually talk too much about me. So I want to spend maybe 5 minutes in the intro, 10 minutes max, 20 minutes getting into this stuff in terms of pain finding. And then I want to get into transitioning from pain to establishing urgency and then closing out the discovery. This is really that third part. This is really getting into that closeout. And I'll show you how this works now. So it is incredibly important that you don't just find pain, you also establish urgency, right? And I talk about 3 things to get any deal done: pain, urgency, and power. If you have pain, you have genuine pain, you have genuine urgency, and you have power, then you are a long way to getting deal done, right? You're a long way to getting a deal done. So once pain has been identified, and don't worry if you haven't like really gotten to that granular level, like you will establish more pain in the demo. You're going to establish more pain in, even in the latter half of the sales cycle. You constantly revalidate. You're constantly validating and revalidating. So the next step here on this discovery is we want to establish urgency, right? And so how you do this is very simple, right? Firstly, you recap the pain to the prospect and you say, hey, I've asked you a lot of questions and I want to share a little bit about us in a second. So let me just quickly go through and recap some of the things you shared. You mentioned X, you mentioned X, you mentioned X. Does that sound right? They'll say, yeah, that sounds right. And you say, cool. And you mentioned they're all pretty critical and they're all challenges that need to be addressed. I guess, can I understand, does the business as well, does the business broadly, does the other stakeholders as well, do they acknowledge these challenges need to be solved, right? Like, do they acknowledge that there's some criticality here? Then you pause, get them to let you know, look, it is something that the business acknowledges needs to be solved. Or they might tell you, look, the business doesn't yet, but I do. And if you're dealing with the right person, then, if you're dealing with someone senior up enough, then they can make shit happen. Then what you can do is you can say, hey, if the business plans to address this, or by the way, even if they say the business doesn't, but they personally do, and maybe you're dealing with the CIO, maybe you're dealing with the head of technology, right? You can say, look, if the business plans to acknowledge this, and you plan to acknowledge this, is there a project already in place to achieve this outcome? A better way to actually ask this is, I might actually just say budgeted, right? You'll say, hey, is there a budgeted project already in place to address this? And actually, maybe a better way to ask this as well, or is this just an explorer? Right? Or is this just an exploratory exercise? This is a really good way to understand how serious they are about tackling this problem, right? Then you can say, look, regardless of solution or method, when does a solution need to be in place for this problem to be resolved, right? So what you can do here, or what you're essentially doing here, is you're trying to figure out, is there a date? Is there a date that they have in mind when this needs to be addressed, right? So if you ask them this question, guys, the budgeted project question, right? And they say, yes, it's a budgeted project. What that tells you is it's on the roadmap. It's probably a pretty high priority item on the roadmap. And there's dollars that they're tying to actually fix this problem, which is fantastic. So the next thing you want to do here is just understand, right? Like, regardless of solution, right? Create a little bit of distance here. Say, look, regardless of solution, when does a solution, right? Whether it's us or someone else or some sort of internal solution, when does a solution need to be in place for this problem to be resolved? That will tell you really quickly what their target dates are. When are they thinking about having this in place? Last question you ask them is, hey, why is this date important? Yeah, has this been committed to the board? Has this been committed to the exec? Is there a renewal date? Like, why does this problem need to be solved by this date? Why is that important? That will tell you how genuine is this urgency, which is a very, very important thing that you need to do. Now, what we can do here is now we can close out the discovery, right? So part 3, closing out the discovery. So at this point, pain has been quantified, urgency has been established, or maybe it's not, right? They might turn around and say, look, it's just an exploratory exercise. That's fine. You can still ask them that question. You can still say, okay, hey, if it's still an exploratory exercise, do you personally have a date in your mind, or does you and maybe your team have a date in your mind where it would be a bit of a wish list, but you would like to get this problem solved by X date? And that will tell you, even if it's an exploratory exercise, it's not a budgeted project, they're still thinking about solving it. And then you can ask them the same question. Why is that date important? Right? Why does that matter to you? Then you can close out the discovery, right? Urgency has been established, pain has been identified and quantified. The next step is to close it out and establish next steps. So this is how you close out discovery. You've asked them a bunch of questions. Give them a little bit of value now, right? So what I typically do is I will then briefly say, look, thanks for sharing all of that. Can I take a couple minutes now and just give you at least a high-level overview of where I think we can help you based off the challenges that you shared? They'll say yes. And then this is where you need to know your solution pretty well. So make sure you don't, not know your solution. You want to take what they've shared and give them a high level overview and say, look, here is how we can help you achieve a couple of outcomes to solve problems X, Y, and Z. And we would do it through this capability. Now, you share that with them. And then you basically want to then create a little bit of distance and say, look, this is at a high level. I really don't want to show up today and pitch you on any sort of solutions without understanding your world. As I mentioned, the solutions that I mentioned before can potentially solve your problems, but I'd love to flesh this out a little bit further with you. And actually, I'd love to show this to you and get your feedback that this is how you would like your problem solved. So how about if you're open to it on the next call, would you be open to going through a bit of a demo where I can actually just show you exactly how we would solve your problem, and you let me know if it makes sense? Pause, get out of roleplay mode. That's how you want to set up that next step, right? Now, keeping in mind, your next step could be a demo. Your next step could be a workshop, right? Some solutions, if they're highly technical and you need to just workshop it out and get on the whiteboards with your engineer, maybe that's what you position. You could say, look, I think that we can solve your problem based off how we worked with others, but really it comes down to whether or not you see the right fit in terms of how we solve your problem. So would you be open to maybe setting up a further conversation on the next meeting or the next call? We can actually hop onto a physical whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard and actually just map out everything you've shared with us, map out your environment, and then show you architecturally how we'd be able to solve your problem. And potentially we can also walk you through a bit of a light demo if we've got time in that session. And that will give you a really clear understanding of how we work, and then that way you can see if it's how you'd like to solve this problem. How does that sound? Again, what you're doing is you're putting it out there. You're saying, look, how's this as a recommended step? I really want to do this for you so you can get the most value. And then they'll usually tell you, more often than not, yep, let's do it. I want to understand this because look, there's genuine pain, there's genuine urgency, right? And you've done all the right things. Guys, when you've done all the right things, if you've done all the right things, discoveries progress. Very rarely do discoveries not progress as long as you're doing the right things, right? Now, what you want to do is always finish the call on a high, right? So mention that you appreciate their time, mention that you're excited to share more about how you're enabling their peers, and leave them wanting more, right? So just say, hey, really appreciate it today. Fantastic conversation. I got a lot of insight out of this. I hope you did as well. I'm really excited to show you a little bit more on that next call. I do think there's potentially something here. Then you wrap up the call, right? An optional question you can ask as well is, obviously you want to set the date for that call, lock it in the calendar while they are there, and ask them, is there anyone else that they want to include in that call, in that conversation? Encourage them to start getting some people involved now. But that would be, sort of the last thing that you would mention. Wrap up the discovery. That is the end of your discovery. Okay, so now that you've done, what you want to do is to finish off your post-discovery actions, okay? So it is so important that you have standard operating procedures at every part of your sales cycle, okay? SOPs are the best way to have very tight, highly efficient, highly effective sales cycles. When you miss critical procedures and you wing it, you reduce the statistical likelihood of you closing deals, okay? Everything that you do right equals a higher likelihood of you closing a deal. Everything you do wrong equals a lower likelihood of you closing a deal, right? So what you want to do is, as soon as your discovery is done, send them a well-crafted summary of the conversation, okay? Very simple to do this these days, right? I mean, if you're not already, use transcription tools, right? Otter.ai. You can use Read AI, etc. So like, this is straightforward, guys. Like, if you're not using AI, like, fuck you doing, right? Like, get on it. Start using transcription tools. Even if your company has a no transcription tool process, I might get into a little bit of trouble for this, but just record it on your phone, right? Like, no one's going to know, okay? So if you've got your company laptop and they don't allow you to use transcription tools, just use this one, right? It's pretty straightforward. Just use your phone, get Otter AI, get Read AI, get the app, turn it on the transcription in the background, it'll auto-transcribe, take that transcription, punch that transcription into your GPT, ask it to summarize your email. That gives you your email summary. Super straightforward. And then what you can do as well is, once you send that email, what you also want to do is input the information into your 3 whys template, right? So I will share with you what this is in further detail as we continue down further modules. But essentially, the 3 whys template answers these 3 questions: why anything, why Zscaler, or why your solution, and why now, okay? Now, the why anything, that's your pain. The why now, that's your urgency. The why Zscaler, we'll get to how you use this when we talk about demo preparation or workshop preparation. So you can ignore the why you for now. But the why anything, this is very straightforward. You can literally, again, take your transcription, just say, hey, give me a summary of all the key pain points and include any quotes and anecdotes. Get that, right? And pop that into the template, right? So just make sure that it's very clearly summarized and articulated over here. So why are they speaking to you? What are the pain points? And then you can ask GPT, can you also let me know about the customer timeframes and what timeframes they're working off to address these pain points? Include any anecdotes, include any quotes, make it concise. Take that, punch that into the why now bucket, right? And essentially what you're doing here is now you've got a deal artifact, okay? You've got an artifact where if your manager says, tell me about this deal, pull it up. If your engineer says, tell me about this deal, pull it up. These are the pain points we're solving. This is their urgency. This is what they told me. What it also allows you to do is it gives you an opportunity to analyze your deal. So you can look through everything they've shared and gone, you know what? We still need more pain. The pain feels a bit fluffy. We need a bit more detail. What is the business impact? Right? Really get into the details. So then that way on the demonstration or the workshop, which is the next step, you can literally pull it up, right, on your side, or you can share it with the customer. I'll show you how to do all of this when we get to the demo section. but you can share it with the customer and say, hey, these are all the things that you shared with me. I'm just curious, can you tell me a little bit more about this challenge, right? How is it really impacting you guys at the moment, right? Like, what is the real business impact to you, time-wise, risk-wise, cost-wise? You can start to use the 3 whys as a dynamic tool to assess your deals. This is something we used to do at Zscaler, and honestly, it's a fucking game changer, guys. Like, when I started doing this, absolute game changer. Like, it really changed how I approached, doing deals, right? Like, again, this is a good example of one that I pulled together for another customer, right? So, highly recommended that you go through and you do some of this stuff. So that's part of your standard post-discovery actions, right? So you send them the calendar invite. On the call, when you're wrapping up the discovery, you make sure that you tell them to invite anyone else on that. You use your transcription, clean that up, send them the follow-up, take the same transcription, ask it to tell you about the pain and the urgency of why they need to address this problem, and then punch that into the 3 whys. So you basically have another artifact created, okay? Now, what I will talk to you about is what you do next, right? That is just your discovery. You have just finished your end-to-end prep through to execution, through to post-discovery actions. Do not skip steps. Do not miss stuff. I'm telling you, when you become a process machine, that is when you start becoming such a skillful salesperson. Management loves process-driven salespeople because they go, fantastic. This guy has a fucking process. He knows how to operate like a professional, okay? Like, always think about the analogy of like high-level military operators. They know what their SOPs are. They drop into situations and they know exactly what their standard operating procedures are. That is how you want to operate. That is how you become a professional, okay? I will see you on the next video, but if that was useful, give me the whole shebang, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff. Drop any comments below. And if you're really struggling, right, like you look at this and you go, shit, this is great, but I just don't know how to implement it into my day-to-day, or I don't know, what to say or how to pull this together, book some time in below with me. My team has a link down there. We can have a chat and I'd be more than happy to help, okay? So, hope that was useful. I will see you on the next video.